This one I'm excited about. So, since we got a lot to talk about, let's go ahead and just get into it. So, let's roll that mother effing intro.
Free fall as I dive through the kaleidoscope in my mind. No rope up to climb. Gotta remind myself that I'm fine. Mama, I don't really wanna.
I said we were going to get into it, and we're going to get into it. That being the Judgment Day. Now, I bring up these three and not the full four because this is primarily the reason as to why we're going to talk about this, is because the Judgment Day has had a lot of ups and downs in my opinion. I think from its inception, where everything kind of started, because when Edge first had created the Judgment Day, I assumed it was going to be this new age Ministry of Darkness, because it seemed like it was going away. It seemed like it was a huge homage to the Undertaker, with the color scheme, with some of the supernatural-esque gimmicks that they were doing, because it did seem like it was going in that direction. And then it kind of fizzled out from that point to not knowing exactly where they were going to fit or what they were going to do, which started to lead a lot of people to believing that this wasn't going to be something that was going to last. And I was one of those, and then it started to feel stale and not knowing exactly where they were going to go. Then of course they added Rhea to the mix, which was a good surprise with that in. And then you continued to add them feud. Then you had the whole thing with Dominic being added into the storyline with Rey Mysterio and everything, and then history between Edge and Rey Mysterio and all of that. And then you just had the stuff with Finn and everything else just going in and culminating into what we pretty much have now. And now it just seems like you just have a group of rambunctious people who are out to basically prove themselves by any means necessary. And with that, you have a concoction, a positive concoction of things that could actually come out of this in favor of everybody. And the reason I bring these three up is because I believe that this is the core of the Judgment Day, because you have had Priest being brought in by Edge. You had Rhea also being brought in by Edge for the particular reasons of them being overlooked. And with that, you had them starting to come into their own to the point to where they felt refreshed. Now, of course, it didn't initially happen with the Edge thing, because after they still couldn't figure out their footing, once they got to the point to where they added Finn and Dominic, then you started to see more and more of what these individuals could do. And then of course Dominic being one of the major players in all of this, because of the fact that this has done wonders for his character. Well, we'll get into Dominic later, but what I want to individually talk about each one of these members, because it is that important that we get to each one. And firstly of those being Damian Priest. Now, Priest, of course, now is your current Money in the Bank, Mr. Money in the Bank. And I believe it was the right decision. Now, of course, on the previous video that I with LA Knight, where I talked about LA Knight being one of the people that could have, or that should have won the Money in the Bank briefcase before, I believe that they picked the right person. And for that reason, it's mainly because Damian Priest has the most potential, and because Priest has been so well paced with his push. His push has been well paced within the confines of WWE, because he's not somebody that they shot to the moon. He did kind of stutter step in the beginning because it's almost like, again, with the whole Vince McMahon stuff, they didn't know where really to slot him. So when they finally found where to slot him, and finally when they found where he belonged within the confines of the roster, he began to flourish. And it wasn't something where it's like it felt like it overstayed or it understayed. It felt perfect. And they kept him at a point to where you didn't know where he was going to go, but a lot of people had their thoughts or had their presumptions of where they think that he would have been slotted here and there. And I'm glad that he wasn't somebody that they slotted into the main event scene like that. You know, he's kind of floundering around the mid card. He did win a mid card title, obviously, and he kind of hung around within everything that was going on with the Judgment Day, whether it be for the tag titles, whether it be, you know, again for another mid card title, and just storylines that filtered out here and here. But he's been built up at a pace to where now, and I do believe this part here is that he's built himself up to where you can see him as a credible leader of the Judgment Day. And we'll get into what I believe the future is going to be with them when I talk about Finn. But at this point, with the Money in the Bank fitting him perfectly, it's something that you don't have to worry about pushing him immediately, because you have a whole year to kind of build him up if you want to take that long. And now you basically have something that allows you to build story around him and take your time with, again, this well-placed push. And I'm sorry, this well-paced push. But once Edge endorsed him, I think that was kind of the point where, outside of the stuff that I stated before with the beginning of the Judgment Day kind of floundering and not knowing where they were going to go, but you knew that they saw something in him, especially with it being Edge, you know, endorsing him at that point. But outside of that, Priest has the in-ring talent. You know, he has the look, of course, that, you know, everybody wants. You know, they want the tall guy, they want the well-built guy, they want the guy that has that aesthetic thing about him that you can say, okay, well, this is somebody that you can see a championship on. This is somebody that you can see on the WWE billboards, whether he be, you know, the face of the company or just somebody who is shown in prominence, you know, with all those, like you think about the WWE 18-wheelers that come across, like the stuff that they do for the shows. You can see his face on one of those. But on top of that, this is the main thing about Damian Priest, outside of his issues that he had with his mic skills and his promo skills, because he kind of had a rough start. And I think with him being in a Judgment Day, that's kind of fixed a lot of those issues, where he's starting to stand more on his own to the point to where you don't really have to worry about where he's going to go once the mic hits his hand. But the main thing is that he has extreme Razor Ramon vibes. And this is the one important thing that I do want to touch on. And that's the fact that you get to do for Priest what was not done for a Scott Hall / Razor Ramon. In the fact that you had somebody in Razor Ramon who had everything to be pushed as a main eventer and to stay there. But you didn't capitalize on it. Of course, he ended up leaving, and then, you know, with Kevin Nash to go create the NWO and WCW. But I think right here, especially with Damian Priest, even just, I mean, like here, you know, walking out like Rey Mysterio, walking out like Razor Ramon, wearing Razor Ramon's vest, or, you know, homages to his vest here and there. And even some of his in-ring style is akin to Razor Ramon. And I think you can do right by this by making him that. And this is kind of the theme that tends to happen with which is what I'm seeing within the Judgment Day, is that you have all the main characters within the Judgment Day almost paying an homage to somebody else. You have, you know, Damian Priest paying homage to Razor Ramon. You have a Rhea Ripley almost paying an homage to China, and we'll get into that also. And then, of course, you have Dominic Mysterio paying an homage to, yes, his father in some parts with his name, but more so paying an homage to Eddie Guerrero, which I think is fantastic. You know, but I think when we look into it, Damian Priest would be the perfect shoe-in at that point where we lose Finn, because I believe whether it be an amicable split or a split where he's being kicked out, we're going to get ourselves to a point where we have a Judgment Day without a Finn. So, but from there, we have to talk about Mommy, Miss Rhea Ripley. Now, what is there to say about Rhea Ripley that hasn't already been said? I mean, we've already talked about, her having China vibes, because it seems like it's going that way. I think they've pretty much have everything set up for her once she departs from the women's title at some point. I think that the logical advancement would be her going for a men's title, i.e. probably the Intercontinental Championship, US title. I don't think she's going to go for a world title. She may compete for one, but I don't think that she's going to win. I think she will inevitably win a men's mid-card title. I don't know how that's going to translate. I mean, I think people are going to eat it up. I think it's going to be, I think it's going to be more well received than when China won the Intercontinental Championship. And I think it's going to be less of a gimmick thing, like, because with China, when she won the Intercontinental Championship, she won it as a co-champ with Jericho, and then you had the whole thing with Eddie Guerrero and that whole deal. But I believe that the direction that they're going to go, at least for this part, and I believe this may happen on the tail end of Judgment Day's lifespan, I think that she will win a men's title. But the thing about Rhea is that she's not handcuffed to the Judgment Day. She can pretty much stand on her own. She can stand with the group. She can stand wherever, and she can be perfectly fine. And she has been built up to a point now where she is that prominent female star that a lot of people look to when they think about the female division in WWE. It's not, I mean, yeah, Charlotte is good, and everybody knows how I feel about Charlotte. But the thing is with Rhea is that she is not only likable, but she's relatable. And that's what a lot of people tend to like. On top of that, she has something about her that just attracts everybody to her, and she becomes a must-see individual. And of course, it's a shame when you think about earlier this year's WrestleMania, where she could have easily main evented night one. But of course, you had the story with the Bloodline that needed to kind of, because the storyline has to take place. And I think if it wasn't for Charlotte being within the confines of that match, a lot of people probably would have lobbied or would have been okay if she would have gone on to main event night one instead of the tag match. But it is what it is, and we're aware. But again, there's not much really to say about Rhea that hasn't already been said. Like, we already know this because it's there, and she has it. And the thing is, I think that her joining Judgment Day was all the better for her, because at that point she was getting stale. And I think it's also because they did not know what it was that they were going to do with her. So at that point, we could have easily assumed that she would have been floating within the women's division, not knowing where to go, and been like somebody in the fucking tag division, like she was slotted with Liv Morgan, and they had that whole thing going on. But luckily we got her in this situation, and everything has worked for the better. Now, I was going to save this for last, but I think I'll go ahead and talk about it now, because I think it makes the most sense to transition in a nice segue. And that's the fact that this whole thing here is the reason why this whole thing works so good. For one, Dominic, and two, for Rhea. This relationship that you have between these two has benefited both of them in a multitude of ways. Dominic being Rhea's pet project, for lack of a better term, has been fantastic. And it has done wonders for Dominic in terms of his character and in terms of what he's been able to do within the Judgment Day. Now, I don't know if this is going to be something that outlasts Judgment Day or something that they're going to carry on outside of that, because it is funny, the two people that they're paying homages to, whether it be intentional or unintentional, Chyna and Eddie Guerrero, who did have an on-screen relationship. And it's just funny how that plays out. But I think it would benefit them to carry this outside of Judgment Day as well. But I don't think it needs to. And I think that needs to be stated very much so, because of the fact that Dominic is in a place where he could see himself outshine Rhea, and this could then push Rhea into being a face. But you never know. But that is a question mark in itself for me. But there are things that I would like to see with them, with how they do that. But neither here nor there. Dominic's mic skills, though. One thing that I wanted him to do when he was getting these heavy boos was kind of embrace it the way that Randy Orton embraced it when he was with Evolution, and when he just got major fucking heat. He is starting to embrace it more now. I will give him that. But I would watch him when that heat would start to come, because it wasn't like X-Pac go away heat. It was, we hate you, and it did seem like that at first, but it initially, but then it started to become, love to hate you heat. And I say that because people get in on it, and it's not something, because the thing is, if you have X-Pac heat, it's going to affect everybody around you. This primarily just affects Dominic for the most part when he's on TV, and it becomes that fun thing to do, to boo the fuck out of him whenever he's on screen. And I think it's fantastic for his character, especially with him being a heel, because you eat into this, and then what you do is you organically pull them to your side. And I say that because of what happened during the match on NXT when he went up against Wesley for the North American Championship. He got a legitimate pop from the crowd when he won. And this is why this whole thing with him winning the North American Championship cannot be overlooked. This has to be something that they actually do right. You cannot miss with this, because it has every chance to fail, and at the same time it has every opportunity to succeed, because this here is the perfect chance to be able to allow Dominic to stand on his own and do what was not being able to be done before, because he should have started in NXT, and he's gone on to voice that and state that he should have started in NXT as well. But this is also a chance for redemption, because now he has an NXT championship. He can easily be able to be slotted in the storylines on NXT and then further the whole thing with Judgment Day. With that, this also gives him a chance to work on his in-ring stuff, work on his promo stuff, and then get more people organically on his side. So that way, when he's on the main roster, you can easily start to see where people start to cheer, people start being okay, and then the major boos start to die down to the point to where now he's starting to be on a more level side with the fans, where it becomes a mixed reaction versus a, hey, we fucking hate you reaction. So hopefully they can do this right, and they have legitimate plans for him within this whole thing with NXT. So that way we can get Judgment Day here after the whole stuff with Finn. So, but, hopefully they go ahead and allow him to do what's necessary, so that way we can place yet another jetpack firmly onto the back of Judgment Day as a whole. Now, when we talk about Finn, I don't think there's much to say, in terms of Finn in regards to the Judgment Day, mainly because I think Finn's days and Judgment Day are numbered. Whether that be, again, an amicable split or him being kicked out. That's where the question is. But as far as my opinion of the situation and where I believe things are going to go, Finn is going to be champion. Now, my personal opinion, again, is that he is probably going to beat Seth Rollins at SummerSlam. And this is just a quick prediction on the whole thing, because I do believe that he's going to win, and I also do believe that there may be a cash in that happens between, from Priest onto Finn for that same title. Now, in terms of what happens with JD McDonough and the whole Finn thing, because again, my personal opinion, I do believe JD McDonough is going to join the Judgment Day. But the question that I have is that going to happen with Finn there, or is that going to happen as a result of Finn being kicked out? Because I do see a point where you do have every member of the Judgment Day that has something, akin to a title. And I say akin because, the Money in the Bank is a guaranteed title shot, but it's not necessarily a title. So it's akin to a title. But they all are going to collectively have something, of their own. Now, as far as Finn's future goes, I believe that what will probably happen is that he'll win this title. He'll defend it a couple times, and then you'll get that whole turn with the cash in and everything. But after that, I think you're going to get some, a feud between Finn and Priest, and then that'll inevitably come to a head, and then you'll get Finn probably away for a while. And I think after the whole bloodline stuff comes to a head, you'll finally get Finn as one of those prominent people within the mid card elsewhere, and he'll probably be a face at that point. But what I would like is this Finn back, the Finn that returned to NXT and basically became Prince Balor at that point, and they did that whole thing. I think this Finn is probably the best bet, especially if you're not going to utilize the Demon, if you're going to have Finn not necessarily be a face or heel, just kind of have him stand on his own and not really trust anybody. I think that would be fucking perfect, because I think it will be a resurgence for his character. You don't have to utilize the Demon at all, and you can have him stand on his own without any issues or any MacGuffin for a storyline as to why he's X, Y, Z or whatever. But that's just my hopes on that end. Now, JD McDonough is easy what they can do with him, because the thing is, and this is why this part is very quick for me, is because the only thing that Judgment Day will be missing, and this is a good reason and a good way to kind of inject more life into them and to allow them to kind of be a newer version of the Judgment Day, is to make them more violent. And who better than to add JD McDonough, who basically is what they're missing. They're missing that killer. You've had the beginning where it's like they felt, overlooked, they felt like they were under the thumb of Edge, and then they're sitting on their own. Then you got this whole thing, where they add Dominic, and they're very comedic, and they still have their stuff, but they always have fun, and they bicker here and there. But you don't have that violent streak. You don't have that mean streak that they could have. And I think that if you add JD McDonough to that, and he could basically be the new Balor, but a more vicious version of that, to the point to where now you've basically now you have a faction that is more so feared than anything. And if you do that, it easily fills that void that the bloodline is going to leave, to where now you have this group that's running roughshod on everything. and you have nothing but young guys within that, you know, outside of course, Priest. But, you know, he still fits the mold in that because he still has that cool vibe. But he's going to be that main eventer that kind of relates to them, that actually ends up making it make more sense. And of course, with that, after this iteration of Judgment Day, you can easily shut it down and then that be it. And then they're done. And now you have everybody who's been able to take away from it in a positive way and be able to stand on their own and become, whether it be, you know, top mid-carders, main eventers, whatever the case may be. Everybody's going to benefit from being within and then out of the Judgment Day. So from that point, that's what happens there. So it should be easy, open and shut. But that's where I think that the future of the Judgment Day is going to go, and the future of these individuals are going to lead to at some point. So with that said, whether you loved it, hate it, don't forget to rate it, thumbs up, thumbs down, leave all your comments, concerns, questions down below. We're going to do more with the series, obviously, and we're going to end up doing the video that is the reason for all of this at some point, rather sooner than later. But again, until you see this handsome face and hear this immaculate voice, I bid you all adieu. And until next time, you beautiful, beautiful mother effers, tag the fucketh out.
Dollars make a way to make a change. Gotta be insane to make those same mistakes again. So I'm switching lane to lane. Pray the curb don't scrape the